There was once a time where Brandon Cook would put on the football helmet, strap up the pads, and go play football with the boys. Those days are long gone, but I have plenty of memories from those times that I want to share with you guys. What's Cookin' 24, my football career. Here we go. How's everybody doing today? It's another Wednesday, and that means it's another episode of the What's Cookin' podcast, episode 24. We are going to be talking about my football career. A lot of you guys probably know I used to play football growing up. I had a lot of fun in my years, met a lot of cool people, played with some fun friends, teammates, had some interesting, strange, and entertaining coaches along the way. I have a ton of memories and a ton of experiences and stories that I want to share with you guys. Every step of my football career offered something new, something different, and maybe some funny stories that go along with it. So I think that's going to be fun to talk about. Look at Brandon as a football player. You might not be able to picture it, some of you guys, but believe it or not, I was slinging the rock back in the day. I was scoring touchdowns, and I was putting on a show. And then high school happened, and I went in a different direction, but we'll get into that. First off, we do have a few non-football related items I want to get off here before we get into the main part. Last week, you guys probably know that I had trouble uploading my podcast episode. Usually, I just upload it through Anchor, and it distributes it to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I wake up in the morning after I scheduled the episode and everything's good. We're firing on all cylinders and the episodes are published and ready to go. However, about 1 in every 8 episodes, I would say, we come across some issues. And I wake up that next morning and I see that the Apple Podcast version has not been published and the Spotify version has not been published. And I have to hop on to a service called Apple Podcast Connect, and I have to refresh my RSS feed, which distributes the episodes, and hopefully that'll refresh in time, and then I head off to work and hope that things went well. Usually they do, even in these different scenarios. But last week we had a elevated issue, an issue that surpasses the previous issues that I've had. And it got to the point where I had to send in a service request to Apple Podcasts. And they never replied to me from what I saw. And they never did anything about it. So I had to play around with it myself. At first, I thought that the issue was I used a / character in the title of my podcast. And I went back and renamed the podcast title. And sure enough, it fixed it. I changed the / to an ampersand. And we were good to go. So just out of curiosity, I was like, what if I change it back? I changed the title back to a / and it's still fine. So I'm very confused. I guess I'm not going to be using slashes going forward. And if I do want to use a /, maybe I'll try ampersand first and then change it over to a /. I don't know, guys. I was very confused. Hopefully we're not going to have those issues going forward. I'm going to have to wake up early in the mornings and double check again. But that's what happened. And just to let you guys know, in case that ever happens again, you can listen to the podcast still by going to anchor.com and searching up What's Cookin'. I can link it for you guys in the future. Also, the YouTube channel is independent of Anchor. So if you go to YouTube and search What's Cookin' podcast, my episodes should come up. And those should be more reliable than the other formats. But I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that does not happen again, and we're going to be smooth sailing going forward, hopefully. One other thing before we dive in, I need to hold myself accountable, and I need to make an announcement. Some of you might remember during the pandemic, I was going hard in the paint, I was going hard in the gym, I was working out a lot, and I got to the point where I could dunk a basketball for the first time in my life. I was looking up a bunch of tutorials on vertical jump training and leg strengthening and technique and approach and everything. And I got to the point where I was able to throw down a dunk. And it was super cool. I got a video of it and everything. Felt like I was on top of the world. But then I made the decision to end it there. I didn't continue those workouts. I didn't continue to try to improve my vertical. And eventually over time, I have reverted back to a lack of a vertical allowing me to dunk a basketball. So we're going to do something about this, guys. We're going to change that. We're going to get back on the dunk training program. We're getting in the gym. We're working on the vert. And I'm going to try to throw down some more dunks in 2023. So I want to announce that on the podcast because then people are going to know. And I feel like I need to be held accountable by letting others know. So now I don't have any way to back out of it because then I will look like a failure, and that's not an option. So consider this my announcement that the dunk training is back in session. Brandon will be throwing down some slams later this year if all goes according to plan. Now that we have that out of the way, now that we've taken care of some housekeeping items, we're going to get into the main part of the episode. That is my football career, starting all the way back as a wee lad and going as far as I made it in my football career, which you'll find out very soon. The earliest memory I ever have of watching the game of football is the 2005 Capital One Bowl, Iowa versus LSU, where Warren Holloway scored a last-second touchdown to give the Hawks the win. It was Drew Tate slanging that thing about 50-something yards to Warren Holloway, who was pretty much an unknown receiver at the time. I don't think he contributed much other than that play. But he scored the game-winning touchdown, and that was Nick Saban on the other sideline against LSU. So we took down Nick Saban in a bowl game. The Hawks won, and that was my first memory of watching football because all my family was over at our house. We hosted a little bowl get-together, and everybody was jumping up and down screaming like we just won a game-winning touchdown, because we did. But at the time, I thought that the touchdown didn't count because the clock expired before Warren Holloway made it into the end zone. And I didn't know at the time that as long as you get the snap off before the clock finishes, before the clock gets to 0, then the rest of the play can finish out. Because I was thinking basketball, where if you're still touching the ball and the clock hits 0, game's over. But football, you just got to get the snap off. And so I was very confused about that. And thankfully, my relatives that were celebrating were correct and I was wrong, and the Hawks got the win. So it was a learning moment, and it was a big celebration and a key point in my football career because that's the earliest that I remember anything football related. And then another early football memory would be the Bears versus the Colts in the Super Bowl. That was the first NFL game I remember watching. Peyton Manning and the Colts ended up taking down the Bears. However, it was Devin Hester who got the party started with that huge kickoff return for a touchdown. That was crazy. And I thought that the Bears were going to ride that momentum and win, but no. It was Peyton Manning and the Colts fought back and got the job done. When it comes to playing football, my brother, who is about a year and a half older than me, he started playing flag football because obviously you have an age requirement that you have to meet to be on a flag football team. And so he met the requirement before I did, and I got to see him play some flag football, and it looked really cool, and I thought it would be fun. So when I got old enough, I started going out for flag football as well. And growing up in Cedar Rapids, we had Metro Youth Football Association, MYFA. They hosted flag football leagues and a bunch of games and all that good stuff. So you get to start around the age of first grade, I think, maybe first or second grade for flag football. And they would assign you your team names to be the name of an actual college football team. And so the ones that I remember playing on were Kansas State Wildcats. We had the purple shirts rocking, just like Kansas State in real life. Then the Kansas Jayhawks. That's actually a rivalry. We had the blue and red going for a little while. And then I also played on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. We had the green and black shirt. So it's kind of cool that they do that. I don't really know who decided that or like what the reasoning behind that is, but I thought that was really cool. So I remember playing on some of those teams and having a lot of fun with kids my age. I played a lot of different positions in flag football. I mostly remember what I did as quarterback and running back. I don't think I remember any key blocks as a lineman or anything else. I guess I do have some good defensive plays. I think I did have an interception here and there. I remember having a fumble recovery. But the thing about flag football is they don't let you, at least in MYFA, they don't let you advance a takeaway. Like if you get a fumble recovery or you get an interception, they don't let you advance that and return it. And that's kind of sad and depressing as a defender. You know, you work hard and you put in the work and you get that takeaway and you're just stuck right there. The offense comes out. So I think that's supposed to be for safety reasons, that they don't want kids getting clotheslined on an interception return or something. But I don't know, man. I wanted to pick that ball off and house call it. So I was a little frustrated, but overall flag football career, had a lot of fun. I was wearing glasses back in the day. If you guys didn't know, I had eye surgery when I was like 1.5, maybe 2 years old. And so I had to wear glasses from age 2 on. And so I was wearing my glasses out there, juking kids out, scoring touchdowns, doing my thing. And, I was putting in the work and I was having fun. And I thought football was a really fun sport. And I was having the time of my life at that age. So nothing really bad to say about flag football. It was a great starting point. I got to meet a lot of friends. I got to learn the fundamentals of the game of football. And it's kind of the building blocks for the years to come ahead. So then we head over to the next step in the journey, which is tackle football. The pads start popping in 4th grade. So I played flag football all the way up until this point, and then you get to 4th grade, they finally let you put on the pads, put on the helmet, and start hitting some kids. 4th grade, Kennedy Cougars Gold team. They no longer do NFL teams when I got to tackle football. When my brother played tackle football, I think he was on the Chiefs. So like they assigned, similar to flag football, how they gave them college team names. They used to do NFL team names for tackle football. But by the time I got there, they just changed it to high schools. And they were focusing on more like district off based on where you live and what school district you're in. So you'd start getting familiar with some of the kids on your high school team, I guess, was the approach for that. So by the time I got there, I was on Kennedy, 4th grade Kennedy Gold team. It was a big adjustment from going from flag football to tackle. You had so many different rule changes. You had a lot more complicated plays. We even had in tackle football, MYFA, we had the wristband for the quarterback to look on the plays and like do all that stuff. Like it was a big step up from just the coach. Well, I guess some background knowledge here. In flag football, every play you would have a huddle and your coach would be out there on the field with a little notebook with like some play diagrams, and he would show you like the exact, like in Madden, what you see, the routes and everything and the blocking techniques and everybody's path and what they're supposed to do. Your coach would show that diagram to you every single play and it'd be easy to remember. But tackle football, coach tells the quarterback tells the team, and you got to remember what that play means and what to do. So that was a lot more complicated. I played quarterback in 4th grade for tackle football. I think what they had me do was rotate quarters. So I would play like 1st and 3rd quarter, and then a different kid would play 2nd and 4th quarter or something like that. So I would split time playing quarterback, but I had a lot of fun doing it. And there was one thing that kind of frustrated me though, and that was playing tackle football while wearing glasses, you have to put a helmet on over top of your head, which has glasses on it, with the glasses that wrap around your ear, and then that football helmet comes down and just condenses your ears into your head, and it would smash against your glasses, and your glasses would really just dig into your head, and it'd be painful and uncomfortable, and your glasses would fog up when you're running. And it was just so frustrating at times. I tried to get some strap to put on the back of my glasses so it would kind of secure them in place. That worked a little bit temporarily, but I was still super frustrated with that. And I tried to fight through it the best I could, but a little uncomfortable, you know. As a kid, you just want to go out there and not have to focus on the little things like that. But my head was like abnormally shaped, I suppose, and the football helmet didn't fit me quite right, and the glasses didn't help, so that was unfortunate. But aside from that, I had a lot of fun. I did. I was playing quarterback. I was throwing some balls. I did throw a touchdown pass at the Unidome. That was a cool moment. They try to schedule every team to, in MYFA tackle football to get a chance to play at the Unidome once a year. And so when we got our time to play, I think I remember throwing, it was like a 5 or 10 yard in route. So the receiver started on the right side of the ball and then ran an in route to the left. And I hit him in stride, and it was mostly the receiver doing the work after that, but he ran it in for a touchdown, and we scored. I don't remember if we won or lost that game, but I remember scoring a touchdown in the Unidome 4th grade year. That was a lot of fun. I think as a team, we didn't do very well. We struggled against some of the other teams, but some fun memories in 4th grade. And, you know, it was an adjustment, and it was something new, but I got outside my comfort zone. I made new friends, and I was playing tackle football, man. I was living the dream. Then it came to 5th grade. It came to the 2010-2011 year. And in the off season, I believe my mom asked me if I wanted to keep going out for football, if we wanted to sign up again. And for most kids, this would be a no-brainer. But for me, I remembered some of the pain that I had with that helmet going over my head. I remembered the pain with my glasses fogging up and digging into my head. And I was in AAU basketball at the time too. So I had to leave some practices early to go from football to basketball, and it was crazy busy. And I made the decision to not go out for tackle football 5th grade year. I think the main part of that was because my glasses and how painful that was and how much of a struggle it was. But another thing that contributed was definitely basketball practice. I have always liked basketball as my main sport, and football would be number 2. And so I wanted to dedicate my time to basketball because I loved it so much, and I didn't think that football was worth the trouble at that point. So I made the difficult decision to take that year off, focus on basketball, and, you know, we can always revisit later down the road, and that's what I decided to do. So 5th grade year, played basketball, had a lot of fun. Then it came back around to that time again in 6th grade. But there had been a change made at this point when I returned to the decision-making process of going out for 6th grade football. And that is that halfway through the 5th grade year, I decided to get contact lenses instead of glasses. This was a huge decision, and honestly one of the best that I've ever made, because as an athlete, it's almost impossible to wear glasses while you're playing. You could do sports goggles. I know some people that do sport goggles. That wasn't really my interest. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I tried contacts, and contacts were tough at first, man. You had to get really comfortable touching your eye, putting this plastic thing in your eye. I don't know if it's actually plastic, but it feels like it. And you have to wash them at night and keep them in a container and freaking do all this stuff that I was so foreign to me at the time. And at first, when you use contacts, at least when I did, they didn't even work. You couldn't see any better with the contacts on because your eyes haven't adjusted yet. So it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to just let my eyes adjust to the fact that contacts are even a thing. And then once my eyes are like, okay, now we understand what's going on, then I could start seeing a little better with these contacts in. And I started getting used to that, and it was awesome. It was so much better. I was feeling good. I was playing good. If you feel good, you look good. If you look good, you play good. Something like that. That was the motto going into 6th grade year, I suppose. And I decided to make an epic comeback to tackle football. I joined the 6th grade Kennedy Green team, and I felt a whole lot better playing with contacts in. The helmet wasn't as bad, and we were balling, man. I started playing a little more wide receiver in 6th grade. I think that we had a kid that was pretty good at quarterback, and coach kind of just let him drive the team for the most part of the year. So I was fine playing at receiver. It was something new, but I enjoyed it. And once again, the team didn't have a whole lot of success overall. Some other teams in the district in the MYFA were absolutely taking us to town, and we were getting beat pretty bad some games, but I was having fun at wide receiver, and I was learning a new position and having fun doing it. There is an interesting component to 6th grade year, and that is that I'm now in middle school. And when I went to Franklin Middle School, it was kind of half and half between Kennedy kids and Wash kids. And I got to meet a bunch of Wash kids going into 6th grade football season, but I wasn't playing with them because middle school sports don't start until 7th grade. They don't let you in 6th grade. So in MYFA, it was me and a bunch of Kennedy kids going against a lot of our friends from Franklin and the Wash kids. And we played against each other in tackle football 6th grade year, and we got destroyed. These Wash kids in my age group had an insanely good class, and they did not hold back. I remember I wasn't the quarterback at this point. It was a different kid, but there was a kid that was playing defense when we were on offense, and he went in and got a sack on our quarterback, and he did the Dougie. He did the Dougie dance after getting a sack. I'm pretty sure they threw a flag, if I had to guess. I don't remember exactly, but all I remember is we lost by like 49, and kids were out there doing the Dougie on us. So that's how you summarize 6th grade football. But however, I do have to throw in once again, we did have a chance to play at the Unidome. Most teams get a chance once a year at MYFA to do that. I came back to the Unidome, this time at wide receiver, and I caught a touchdown pass in the Unidome. It was super cool. I was lined up as the wide receiver on the left side of the ball, and I ran a post route. Thought I was pretty open. Quarterback found me, chucked it down there. I caught the ball somewhere around the 3 or maybe 2 yard line, and there were some defenders closing in, and I didn't have time to necessarily turn and address the situation. So as I was running the post route, I caught it and just kind of backed my way into the end zone. As I was getting tackled, managed to squeak it over the goal line, and that was it, boys. We scored the touchdown. 2 career football games in the Unidome, 2 touchdowns, 1 in each game, 100% success rate. Even though we did get beat pretty bad that game, it was fun. And those are memories that I'll always have. And playing against the Wash kids was an interesting dynamic. But there you go, 6th grade football. That was the epic comeback. And the conclusion to my Metro Youth football career. 7th grade is a big change, is a big step up. Now we're playing middle school football. Now we're playing with those Wash kids that destroyed us. I played B team wide receiver in 7th grade. And the way I would describe myself at this point in time was unathletic and undersized. I didn't really have my growth spurt yet, and there's some pictures I remember around this time where I was just a little chunky kid, man, compared to what I am now and what I was through high school. This was probably the chunkiest that I have been in my life. Was like end of 6th grade, beginning of 7th grade year. I wasn't super fast. I've never been a fast like athlete or anything, but didn't really have what it takes to make A team 7th grade year. So I played B team wide receiver. I had a couple decent plays, I had some catches. I might have had a nice catch and run here and there, maybe a little yak, some yards after catch, but not a whole lot of personal success this year. However, our A team, mostly those Wash kids, some Kennedy people contributed as well, but they mostly carried us. We had a great A team. We went 5-1. I think it was a 6-game schedule back then. 5-1. We lost to McKinley Middle School at Kingston Stadium, and that was devastating. We knew that those kids were super good, and a lot of the Wash kids knew some of the McKinley kids because they were also going to Wash, similar to the Kennedy Wash dynamic. Those Franklin kids, should I say, the Franklin Wash kids knew the McKinley Wash kids. And, they got the best of us. It was at Kingston Stadium, big stage. I'm pretty sure when we played the B game at Kingston, I did have an interception. So that was cool. I think I was playing safety at the time. I got an interception, returned it for maybe 20 yards, and then got knocked out of bounds. But there you go, 7th grade football year. Decent moments. Some adjustments needed to be made. Not exactly a great year for personal production, but another step in the path to greatness. 8th grade football at Franklin. We are back, and this is our quote-unquote senior year at Franklin, as some may say. 8th grade year, the third and final year. I've started growing. I started hitting my growth spurt a little more 8th grade year. I started thinning out a bit. I wasn't quite as chunky as the year passed, and I did enough to get on the A team. I played A team wide receiver, and then also I was doing double duty, guys. I was playing B team quarterback, and I didn't get any targets on A team as a wide receiver. I was never thrown to, unfortunately, but I did get in. I did throw some blocks. I was downfield laying some devastating blocks, and I contributed to the A team, which ended up going 6-0, undefeated. We had the rematch of the century. We got to play McKinley once again at Kingston Stadium. This was the game we had been looking forward to all year, and we took care of business. We took them down. We beat them. I remember a certain Drew Christensen pick six. That was one of the most iconic plays in my football memories. My man had about a 70-yard interception return touchdown, which really gave us the momentum. And it was super hype on the sidelines that game. Guys were jumping up and down, yelling, and we got the job done. And I'll never forget the handshake line after the game when we beat McKinley. Some of their players, not all of them, their players were crying. They were devastated, man, because that was the game that would have gave them back-to-back city championships and went 12-0 in middle school. But man, we had to come in at the last hour and do what we do. Franklin, 8th grade year, city champs represent. As a B team quarterback, I think I did a solid job. I rallied the troops to mostly a winning season, I believe. I think we only lost one game. We might have also tied one game, if I remember correctly. But I threw some touchdowns. I had some scrambles. I think I might have thrown some 2-point conversions. I might have ran some 2-point conversions. I think I did a solid job on B team, Some of my friends were on that team. I was throwing to them. I was trying to distribute the ball pretty evenly, get a nice little lineup of different receivers, share the love, if you will. But I remember some of my offensive linemen occasionally would step on my shoes as I was getting the snap. So there'd be a few times, and more than you would expect, where I'd be under center. I'd take the snap and turn to hand it off, and I would just get stepped on and trip and fall. And so for some reason, that was an issue that year. And it happened like 3 or 4 times maybe. But overall, I liked it. I had fun. 8th grade A team were city champs. B team was more just fun, having some good times with friends, tossing the ball around, scoring some tutters, and having a good time. So that'll put a cap on the middle school football career. And now is the time where we transition over to Kennedy High School football. As an incoming freshman, I quickly found out that this was a huge step up from middle school football. I was introduced with some summer OTAs, which are also known as organized team activities, because technically you can't call it practice for whatever reason in the summer, because you're not allowed to practice until school starts or something like that. So we just call it organized team activities. Don't ask me why that's the case, but that's what I remember. And the reason I knew it was a big step up is because not only are these summer OTAs where we would practice and watch film and then go back out for a second practice, but the preparation was a lot different. We were watching film on the opponents. We were watching film on ourselves and making corrections to our own mistakes. And coaches would take us in the film room, and the film doesn't lie, boys and girls. You mess up, and the coach will let you know about it, and they won't hold back. And it was you had to be tough, and you had to take it, and you had to take it as a room for improvement and a way to improve rather than some condescending remarks. But I think it was better. I think it was better to watch film and improve rather than the other way around, not doing that. So we also had scouting, where we would watch different opponents and look at their tendencies and look at some of their plays and formations and defensive alignments and try to see where we could take advantage of them, see where we would have to prepare for what they're doing. We'd be in the weight room, and we'd be trying to lift in the summer during the school year and everything. And those are all things that you did not have at any point in my football career leading up to this point. So a lot of new variables introduced this year, and it was a huge adjustment, but I think that it was necessary adjustment. It's the next step in the journey. Moving up the ranks, you got to have more commitment if you're going to try to get better and beat some of these other teams. So I was up for the challenge. I'm going to take a moment to share some funny stories with the coaches that I remember from freshman year. Our head coach was Coach Anderson, and he had a great personality. My man was he still is. He's a great guy, funny dude, down to business, and he can also joke around sometimes. So there was a day where we were doing some offensive drill. I don't remember exactly if it was a drill or actual scrimmage play, but it was a handoff to the running back, and he was supposed to do something, carry out to one side or make some cut or take the ball and run through a certain hole. Not exactly sure, but Coach Anderson wasn't enjoying what the running back was doing. He wasn't approving of the decisions being made, so he said, "You know what, boys, I'm going in." And he subbed himself in at running back with no pads on against high school freshmen that did have pads on. And he went in at running back, and the quarterback took the snap and handed it off to him, and he treated it like full speed and ran through the right hole, did what he thought was the right assignment to try to give the running backs a look at how it should be done. And he was welcoming to the contact of the defense, and defense, it was live action, so one of the defenders, maybe even the two or a couple of them, they tackled him. And I don't know if he did this maybe 2 or 3 times, but the last time he did it, he got tackled and he went to the ground and he was like, oh, or he made some frustrated sound or whatever. He pops right back up. He jumps up. He's like, yep, that's dislocated. He could tell right away that he got tackled and his shoulder was dislocated, but he didn't seem to be in any pain other than that initial reaction. He gave a self-diagnosis that it was a dislocated shoulder, and at the end of practice, he asked one of the other coaches if he could get a ride home with them because he took the hog today. As he said, Coach Anderson was like, you mind if I get a ride with you? I took the hog today. And by hog, he means his motorcycle. He rode his motorcycle to practice, and with his dislocated shoulder, he wasn't able to drive himself home. So one of the coaches had to take him back. And that's the story that I remember of Coach Anderson. Unable to take the hog back, he had to hitch a ride with one of the other coaches. I'm pretty sure he ended up being in a sling after that, if I remember correctly, but he's a tough man, and he went in there, and hopefully the running backs learned their lesson. Hopefully they saw what he was doing and corrected themselves. But I do have another quick story before we move on of freshman year. Coach Labs, wide receiver coach, he was a funny dude. He was great to be around. Very serious, but also could joke around. And that was kind of the theme for freshman year, and that's the kind of stuff I like. So there was always an inside joke among the players that Coach Labs was an actual like NFL caliber football player. And there was a little stretch where Coach Labs missed a few practices and then came back. And some of the players were trying to convince each other that Coach Labs was trying out for the Indianapolis Colts practice squad as a wide receiver, since he was the receiver coach. And some people actually believed it. And they were like, yo, this dude is trying out for the Colts practice squad and he just came back to coach us. This is going to be crazy. And when Coach Labs heard about this, he like addressed the team all at once. He's like, guys, I want you to know something. I'm about a 5'11" white guy with no speed. I'm really slow. There is no chance I'd be on the Colts practice squad. He was roasting himself, and he was calling out the people that started these rumors. But, some people bought it. I didn't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. I couldn't really tell at first, but then he addressed the team, and obviously we knew from that point on. But hey, if you see Coach Labs, you got to ask him, how's the Colts practice squad going? But one last thing with Coach Labs, whenever we would get over to wide receiver drills, and he would see my friend that was a wide receiver. So my friend was named Jimmy Carter. And a lot of people would point out the fact that that's the name of a former president, Jimmy Carter. And he had to go through that quite a bit. He still does, I bet. But when Coach Labs would always make it a point to point that out. So we'd be coming over to practice and we'd go to wide receiver drills. And he'd be like, Jimmy Carter, President Carter, how you doing, man? And it was just hilarious. Every single day you could rely on Coach Labs striking up a conversation with Jimmy Carter. So always fun being around Coach Labs, Coach Anderson, the freshman squad. Didn't exactly have a stellar season. I believe we went somewhere around 500 that year. I played wide receiver once again. I kind of was buried in the depth chart. I pretty much only got in during garbage time or the B games. I think there was B games freshman year. For some reason, I'm struggling to remember if there were B games, but I'm pretty sure there were. There was one specific moment I remember where it was a B game against Wash, and I'm pretty sure this B game was immediately following our main game against Wash, in which we got absolutely destroyed. So everybody's pissed. Everybody on the A team or starters or whatever are absolutely devastated because we just got absolutely steamrolled. And then we send out the B team guys, including myself. And we go out there and we line up. We're in a drive. We're probably around the 30-yard line, the enemy's 30-yard line, so we're getting close to the end zone here. We call a go route for me. I'm lined up on the right side. This is at Kingston Stadium. It's a straight go route. Just try to beat the corner, go deep. And I faked an inside release, and I cut back outside. And I had a step on the corner. And my boy AJ at quarterback, shout out my boy AJ, threw a nice pass right over the corner's head. I caught that baby, and I caught it in the end zone, so I didn't have to do any running afterwards. It was a touchdown, and I was jumping up and down. I was celebrating. I was having the great time. And that was the only touchdown we scored that day because I think the main Kennedy team, freshman team, got shut out. So pretty much 99.9% of our roster was absolutely pissed, except for me. I was smiling ear to ear, and that was an interesting moment because you kind of had to suppress my feelings at that point because the main team was kind of the big focus. But I felt like I had completed my task. I did my job. I did everything I could, so I had to kind of hide my happiness. But, sometimes it's about the main team, not about your personal success. And that's the lesson we had to learn there. So I did practice a little bit on defense. Freshman year, I played hybrid, which is kind of in between a linebacker and a defensive lineman and a corner. It's just like on the edge. So you're in an interesting position where you have to set the edge and you're contained. And I practiced hybrid. I don't think I ever really got in on defense. I'm not really good at defense in any sport, but that's what I practiced that year. And I thought I would just throw that in case anybody cared. Maybe you don't. But there you go. Freshman year, we went about 500. Some funny coaches, some interesting memories, and that's how it went. So we're going to head over to sophomore year football. This is the year 2015, and I was playing wide receiver once again. I wore number 13 as a sophomore. Shout out T Swift, and shout out Keenan Allen. And the year previous, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I played as number 17 as a wide receiver. Shout out to Phillip Rivers, even though he wasn't a receiver. But once again, I only got in during garbage time during sophomore year, and there were no B games, I'm pretty sure, sophomore year. So this was similar to freshman year, except for the fact that I didn't have any fun, if that makes sense. It was tough. The coaches were tough on us. The team spirit was kind of down. It seemed like we were angry. Everyone was always pissed off, about something. And that's not really my vibe, in case you didn't know. That's not the environment I enjoy. Everybody always being pissed off for some reason. So it was an adjustment. However, I do have one fun memory with a coach this year. Coach Sheldon, sophomore year football coach at Kennedy. I think he coached defensive backs. And I changed this year practicing defense as a hybrid, and sophomore year I went over to defensive backs, rotating between corner and safety. And so Coach Sheldon was the coach for defensive backs, and I spent a lot of time with him. So one day, we were just chopping it up at practice, me and Coach Sheldon talking about random stuff. And for whatever reason, we get on the topic of middle names. And people were telling everybody what's their middle name. And so when it got time for me to share my middle name, because Coach Sheldon was asking me, and I told him, my middle name is Mowry. Mowrey. Mowry. Most people have never heard of this middle name. And my coach, Coach Sheldon, was like, oh, I've heard of that name. And we do some more digging, and we do some more questioning, and it turns out that Coach Sheldon remembers my mom from when they went to Kennedy, I believe. It was either my mom or one of her sisters, but he went to Kennedy around the same time as them. And Mowry is my mom's maiden name. And so that's how I got my name, my middle name, to be Mowry. And so he remembers her last name that way. And so that kind of brought back some memories for him. And at this point, when I told him my middle name, I don't think any of my teammates were around at this point. It was just mostly a one-on-one conversation at this point. So I told him my middle name, and we chopped it up for a little bit more. And then he kind of kept that in the back of his mind, and which I didn't really realize. But then a couple days go by, we're back out at practice, and I'm playing at safety. And I don't know if we're doing scrimmage or scout team or whatever, but I'm in at safety, and I come up and make a tackle. And whenever a player from your position group as a position coach, whenever your player from that group comes up and makes a play, you got to get hyped, and you're always happy and cheering on the guys. So I'm at safety. I come up, make a tackle on one of the running backs, and Coach Sheldon is getting hyped. He's like, "Yeah, Mowry. Yeah, let's go, Mowry." And everyone looks so confused because they've never heard that name before. It got super quiet, and everybody was looking around and looking at Coach Sheldon like he had 3 heads. And it was just only 2 people on that football field knew what was going on. Coach Sheldon and myself knew that Mowry was my middle name, and that's why he's calling me that. And it was just a funny little moment that I tell my mom, and she gets a kick out of it sometimes. But yeah, Coach Sheldon using my middle name to refer to me. I don't think anyone else on planet Earth has ever referred to me by my middle name, but that's Coach Sheldon, man. He's always having a good time. He's always poking some buttons, pushing some buttons on people. So that was fun. However, that was one of the few fun memories I have of sophomore year. Other than that, it was kind of that vibe I was talking about. Everybody's pissed off. Everybody's mostly mad about something, whether it was teammates getting mad at each other or coaches getting mad at teammates, players, the results of the game, whatever it was. The mood was generally just pissed off by default. And that didn't really vibe with me. That's not what I do. That's not me. I'm a happy dude. I try to be optimistic at all times. So I was not enjoying this year of football nearly as much as any of the other years. And there was this particular day where we were out at practice, and we were practicing something for the starters. So the starters are out on the field, and everybody else is just lined up on the side. And I remember being physically scraped up and physically in pain because I think my elbow had a huge scar on it or scab or something, and I had to get it wrapped up every day. And it was at the point on my elbow where the wrap is going around all the way around your arm, and so it's at the point where you bend your arm. And so it made it hard for me to bend my arm, but I was a receiver, so I needed to bend my arm to be able to catch balls at different angles. And so it was like a lose-lose situation. I was standing on the sideline. I was like a little bit sick too. I had a runny nose, and I was banged up, and I wasn't even playing because it was the starters that were working on something in practice. And it was just not a good time. And I was standing next to one of my friends, Jimmy, if you remember, Jimmy Carter, Jimmy from freshman year. And he starts talking about, yeah, man, I don't know about this. I'm thinking maybe next year I'll go out for golf instead. That sounds better. And I was like, you know what, man? I might take you up on that. I might join you. And we start talking more and more. And golf started seeming like the move. Golf started seeming like an attractive option at that point. I was a tall, skinny kid that was not very athletic. So I had to have some self-awareness. I had to look at myself and think about the future. I had to reevaluate if I was going to be worth anything going forward in football. So I kind of came to the conclusion that this was a good time to transition. That's how I like to refer to it. So ended up going out for golf that next year, and I am very, very glad that I did. I had so much fun playing golf, and I didn't have to go through some of the brutal and frustrating and annoying times of high school football, even though some of it was very fun. Some of it was super rewarding and a great bonding experience with the guys. I think that golf was more of my skill set, and I'm glad that I did it, and I had a lot of friends that also played golf, so it was a great fit. So no regrets from that viewpoint. I do want to give a shout out, though. Sophomore year was, even though I just described it as pretty tough and grueling for my own standpoint, the varsity Kennedy Cougars sophomore year. Every single time that the sophomore team played, it was right before varsity, so we got to stay and watch varsity every time. Our Kennedy varsity team sophomore year was insane. We went 13-0 to start. I believe it was 13. Dylan, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong there, but we won every single game up until the championship game, and then we came up against Dowling and their recruited all-star team, and we got bested, I will admit, but guess what? We had everybody from a district, and Dowling had everybody from the freaking Midwest. So who do you think's going to win? Let me just say that offensive line in 2015 for the Kennedy Cougars is some of the best offensive line work that I have ever seen. Tyler Drawley was running wild, and Sean Byer was out there catching touchdowns, spiking the ball in the end zone, doing his thing. And we just had a loaded team. Everywhere you look, it was talent and athleticism and strength. And it was so fun to watch that 2015 team. We got to see every single game because the sophomore team played right before them and stayed to watch. So, love that. Shout out to the 2015 squad. You guys are probably the best football team that Kennedy has ever had. I don't think we have any football championships at Kennedy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 2015 Cougs, you don't want to mess with them. So let that be a lesson. Roll Cougs. Thank you guys for listening to my football career. Hopefully you found some interesting value out of that. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the stories. I ended up going over to golf at the end, and that's how my football career ended. So it was a business decision, and it was one that I look back and thank myself for making. So, gotta love football. It's a physical game. It's a dangerous sport. You got to have a lot of commitment and grit to make it through a season. And I made it through quite a few in my day, so I'm proud of that. And now I get to observe safely from the comfort of my couch. But I'm still out there playing golf, so the golf grind keeps going. At this point, we're going to head over and see what is cooking in each of the 4 categories.
What's cooking in sports?
We have an update on Damar Hamlin. Damar remains hospitalized at this time, but he is in good spirits. He is located now at Buffalo General Medical Center / Gates Vascular Institute. So he's made his way from Cincinnati back to Buffalo. He's been on video calls with the team. I don't know if some of you guys heard the news, but he was like flexing on a video call to the team. He was saying some positive words, talking to some guys, showing his positivity. He's been tweeting things out. He's been posting on Instagram. He's fully aware of what's happened to him and what his situation is, and he's starting to slowly recover, and that's what we like to see, boys. That's what we love to hear. All the prayers are working, and we got to keep sending them. And someday DeMar will be back to full strength, and whether or not he decides to resume his football career, we'll see what happens when we cross that bridge. But positive news right now, and that's what we like to hear. The college football championship game was on Monday night, and it was between Georgia, who is a powerhouse in college football, and then TCU, who is not really thought of as a excellent college football team or organization or whatever you want to call it. They're not traditionally known for their football, except for back in the day. A certain man that wore number 5 and went by the name LaDainian Tomlinson happens to be my favorite NFL player of all time. He was out there at the game, and the game was at SoFi Stadium, which is where the Chargers play. So this is like a perfect scenario for LT. He was there at the game. He led the TCU captains out to the coin toss. And my man was rocking the Texas outfit. He had the hat on. He had the boots on. And Tomlinson, I'm pretty sure he has a nephew that plays on that team. So he's got even more connections than you would think. And so he's out there with the boys. And I was like, you know what? I'm taking TCU by 1,000,000. It's LT out there with the Horned Frogs. And you don't want to go against LT because he's the GOAT. And so I was pumped up to see that. And then the game happened. And we see that Georgia is off to a strong start. I believe it was Stetson Bennett that ran in that first touchdown. And TCU struggled early on. It got up to 10-0, I believe. And then TCU hit a nice deep ball down the left sideline, if I remember right. And then they finished off that drive with a Max Duggan carry for a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, just like Stetson Bennett had. So they were trading some touchdowns. Okay, we got a game meal. Let's go. And then Georgia decided to shut out the lights on TCU, so to speak. They went crazy. They started getting interceptions. They started scoring touchdowns left and right. And they never looked back. And at a certain point, they put their backups in, and their backups were going to town too. Georgia ends up winning 65-7. My goodness. That is a blowout. And I didn't watch nearly as closely in the second half. I decided that my time was better spent doing other things because we all knew the outcome of the game by then. But, wow. Georgia, back-to-back champs, 15-0 season. And something interesting about these two quarterbacks, Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett. First of all, Max Duggan is from Iowa. What? Council Bluffs native. He somehow slipped through the cracks during recruiting, and people at the time didn't really think of him as highly as they do now, because he's obviously now on the world stage out there in SoFi Stadium playing the college football championship game, leading the Horned Frogs, and making some great plays all season, up until this game, I suppose. But, man, he slipped through the cracks in recruiting, and now he's really making a name for himself. I could see him going pro eventually. And then you have Stetson Bennett, who sort of has a similar story, walked on at Georgia, and then he got buried under the depth chart, had so many guys ahead of him, they told him he wasn't going to be good enough, so he transferred to some junior college and played, and then ended up coming back to Georgia and somehow worked his way up the ranks, found a starting position, and the only thing he did from then on out was win championships. My goodness. Back-to-back college football playoff champion. I don't think any other quarterback has two of these things, so Stetson Bennett, tip of the cap to you, my friend. There was a audio clip that came out earlier today, I think, of Kirby Smart, the coach for Georgia. He was I think it was pregame, in the locker room giving some hype speech. My man was going ballistic. He was hyped up. He was mad and angry and motivated all at the same time, dropping every swear word in the book and doing anything he could to rile up the boys. And it seemed to work because they won 65-7. So if you haven't seen that Kirby Smart pregame motivational speech / angry rant. I would recommend you look it up. It's probably on YouTube or definitely on Twitter is where I saw it. My man was hyped, and his players were ready to perform, ready to run through a brick wall, and that's what they did. NFL, the Chargers were playing the Broncos this week, and the infinite wisdom of Brandon Staley is once again on display. He decided to, once we already knew the news that the Ravens had lost, and that means that we locked up the 5 seed, and we could not go any higher, we could not go any lower. This game had no significance. It did not affect our playoff picture. There was no scenario in which we could help or hurt ourselves. So you might as well just treat it like it's a game to kind of maybe throw in your backups, see what your depth is looking like. Maybe throw in Chase Daniel, Joshua Kelly, Josh Palmer, some of these other backups on offense. Maybe rest a few defensive guys and kind of just move on to next week. But no, Staley had other ideas. He wanted to keep the momentum going. And so we play all of our starters, and we end up having injuries to Mike Williams. He injured his back. It seems to be somewhat serious. He's been, he had to be helped out, like walked off the field and then carted off into the locker room. It was a terrible scene. He didn't need to be in the game at all. And I know that it's easy to say that after the game, but I was telling my friend before the game, I was saying, I expect our starters to be sitting. I told him that before kickoff. Because, listen, we know who the Chargers are. We know the history of the Chargers. We disappoint in the big games, and we get injured, and we have coaching malpractices. And we decided to combine all 3 of those and put it into one game. Now, I guess this wasn't exactly a super important game, but we liked to combine the coaching malpractice with injuries, and that's what happened. So Mike Williams got hurt. I think Bosa went off early. I think Kenneth Murray exited the game, if I remember correctly. So just doom and gloom. And we ended up losing, too, even though our starters played against the Broncos, which are a terrible team. So big L all across the board there. And now we're going to have to find a way to lift our spirits as we head into the playoffs. Speaking of playoffs, the matchups are set, guys. The playoffs are set in the NFL. Let me run through these quickly, and then we'll move on to the next section here. Seahawks are going to take on the 49ers at 49ers. That's a divisional game, NFC West matchup. If you would have told me before the season that Geno Smith is going to take on Brock Purdy in an NFL playoff game, I would have called you crazy. I would have laughed in your face. But guess what? You have no way of predicting what's going to happen in the NFL. It's a crazy sport. That's why they play the games. And we have Geno versus Brock in the playoffs. So that'll be interesting. Chargers are going to travel to Jacksonville, take on the Jags. That's going to be the battle of the 6'6" quarterbacks with the long flowing hair. You got Justin Herbert. You got Trevor Lawrence. 2 big athletic guys who were very similar coming out of college. I think Lawrence was a little more high profile because he had more team success at Clemson, but Herbert was more of a sneaky good talent at Oregon that might have been hidden a little more, even though he won the Rose Bowl. So who knows? But then we take a look at the other matchups. Dolphins at Bills, that's another divisional matchup, AFC East. Not sure if Tua's going to be ready for this one, but you know Josh Allen and the boys are going to be hyped up playing for DeMar, as always. And I expect the Bills to run the Dolphins out of the gym, so to speak. Giants are going to be traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. That's going to be close, as the Vikings like to always do. They like to keep it close. I think the Vikings will edge out, as they usually do. They'll win. They'll escape this game. But Giants are going to be rough and tough, and they're going to put up a fight. Ravens at the Bengals. That's another divisional game. My goodness. That's AFC North. A lot of divisional playoff games. My goodness. Joe Burrow, obviously, the headliner there. Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, the Joe squad. They're going to be doing their thing. Jamar Chase is going to be out there doing his thing. We expect the Bengals to take this one. We're not sure if Lamar is going to be able to play, so that's going to be a huge factor, but I think either way the Bengals are going to cruise past the Ravens here. Cowboys at Buccaneers. Wow. That's going to be a pick'em. That's going to be a very, very close game in my opinion. Cowboys have the ability to blow teams out at times. They have the ability to play lights out, and they also have the ability to disappoint greatly. And Dak Prescott has not been his usual self. He's been throwing picks. He's been struggling. Cowboys are volatile. They're like what's a stock I can compare them to? I wouldn't say Tesla because Tesla is one of the leaders in the market, and I wouldn't consider Cowboys to be like that. What's a volatile stock that I could compare the Cowboys to? Let's say they're the ARK ETFs. You know, Cathie Wood, her collection of ARK ETFs. They're supposed to be cutting-edge technology, leading innovation, and super future-focused and everything. But it's really, over the past couple of years, they've just struggled, and they've underperformed, and everything has kind of gone downhill. And the Cowboys are kind of like that team, you know. They're always talked about, they're always hyped up, and they never really amount to their potential, it seems like. They like to live similar to Nebraska back in the 90s. That's when they had most of their success. That's when they built their fame and glory. And now they are hoping to reach those points that they once were at. We also have the Chiefs and the Eagles, first overall seeds in their respective conferences. They're going to have first-round byes. So it's going to be Mahomes, it's going to be Jalen Hurts sitting around waiting to see who they play. And it's very possible that the Chargers are going to take on the Chiefs. So buckle up if that happens. My goodness.
What's cooking in finance?
All in all, to start 2023, we've had a good start. Good start to the year in the markets. S&P 500 is up 2.5% so far, a little over a week in. That's not exactly amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to what we've had recently, we'll definitely take it. We will take it. Crypto is also seeing some similar gains. Bitcoin up 5% to start the year. ETH up 11%. Ethereum doing its thing. And similarly, Netflix having some huge gains. Netflix was up 3.9% on Tuesday. And then if you look at year to date, up 11%. So it seems like Netflix is starting to dig their way out of the hole that they've created. They had a huge drop off in late 21 and all throughout 2022. Then we have Bed Bath & Beyond, who is on the brink of bankruptcy. This is sad because they had been a successful chain of stores for a very long time. I always think of the movie Click, I think it's called, with Adam Sandler, where he goes into a Bed Bath & Beyond and finds that remote that's able to fast forward and reverse and pause time and everything. I'm pretty sure that was in a Bed Bath & Beyond that he did that. So cool store, a lot of useful things. Seems like the in-store locations are starting to become a thing of the past. Bed Bath & Beyond laying off workers, closing stores, stock prices plummeting, doom and gloom is setting in, and people think that it's only a matter of time before they kick the can. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Gemini Earn. I might have mentioned this last week. I'm pretty sure I did. The Winklevoss twins are calling out Genesis Capital. They're going after him. Their CEO, Barry Silbert. According to the Winklevi, they are not getting the money back that they are owed from Barry and the boys at Genesis Capital. They want Barry to step down as CEO because they think he's committing accounting fraud or something along those lines. They're saying that Gemini Earn had 340,000 users who are now at risk of never getting their funds back. We've seen so many similar cases with different crypto lending platforms. And if you're in Gemini Earn, tough times. I'm in Gemini, but not in the Earn section. I gotta consider switching up. I gotta consider temporarily getting my crypto away from Gemini if this continues to go downhill. I thought that Gemini was a trusted company. I thought they were a trusted exchange. And I'm going to wait for all the details to come out before I start pointing fingers, but not looking good right now. And if history repeats itself, then Gemini might be right there with Bed Bath & Beyond on the brink. But I like to have faith. I like to think positively. I think the Winklevoss twins are super smart, and they have a solid reputation. So maybe they will have some financial footwork, as Michael Scott once said, that they will be able to recover and get back on the right track. But not looking good right now.
What's cooking in technology?
Let's talk about the importance of investing in technology. If you don't know whether or not it's important to invest in technology, I would refer you to Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines capped off its 2022 with the unenviable distinction of canceling more than 15,000 flights in total during the week of Christmas, the result of a system failure caused by several issues that were exacerbated by a nationwide winter storm. It was an unmitigated disaster for the Dallas-based airline, with a story leading news sites and network TV news and broadcasts day after day. A public relations disaster that showcased its deficiencies in keeping its technology up to date. Meanwhile, the issues that other airlines faced during the storm were quickly remedied. No system shutdown needed. They did have their troubles, but they were able to get back on the right track. Southwest, however, much bigger problems. The main piece of failing tech was the airline optimization software called Sky Solver, which is supposed to assign crew to flights using a complicated mathematical system. Southwest has grown beyond the capabilities of that old technology, which it began using when it was much smaller. On top of that, the airline flight crew has no front-end technology to input its whereabouts into that system. So that means the crew has to call a crew scheduler on the phone to share that information. That's pretty outdated. That's some dino age, some retro, vintage approach. So, Southwest, what are we up to, man? The shortcomings of that system and its inability to catch up with the problem snowballed into the mass cancellation. No pun intended there, snowballed, which was needed to allow the system to reset. I heard also from a different article that they don't have a CIO, or like a chief technology officer, CTO or something like that. They don't even have the position of like a leader of their technology division. So Southwest completely failing to attend to their technology section of the company. And guess what? It's going to come back to get you. It's going to hurt in the long run when you don't have the ability to schedule flights and employee shifts and crew and everything with the ability that these other airlines do because they invest in technology. They're starting to fall behind, and it's unfortunate. Maybe this will be a learning lesson for them. Maybe they will realize that technology is the future, and if you fail to stay up to date with these systems, you will fail to succeed as a company. So maybe I'm a little biased there as a technology guy, but I think it's a no-brainer. I think you invest in tech and you update your systems regularly and even be looking ahead to years in the future where you need to be forecasting when changes will happen, not just reacting as they happen. So Southwest, get it together, maybe start looking ahead, and maybe start figuring things out with the tech.
What's cooking in video games?
As of January 1st, companies in California with more than 15 employees are required to provide salary ranges in their job listings, and they're going to need to make that information available to existing employees as well. Companies could face fines of $100 per employee if they fail to comply. And then we have Washington, New York, and Colorado that have also enacted similar pay transparency measures. And you're thinking right now, Brandon, what the heck does this have to do with video games? Let me tell you. This is not a government, this is not a law section of the podcast. This is about video games. This is where they come into play. The video game industry enjoys a meaningful footprint in California. That means they're very relevant there. They are very popular, and that's kind of like a home base for the video game industry. So California has over 200,000 jobs in their state in video games. They range from development work to hardware manufacturing and supplying. And this is according to a 2020 study by the Entertainment Software Association, which is a video game trade organization. And part of the reason that these video game companies have been thriving recently is because that they're viewed as recession-proof. People are always going to want to have home entertainment. People are always going to rely on these video games for enjoyment. So the industry benefited from a boost in attention and revenue at the start of the pandemic. Obviously, if everybody's stuck at home, video game numbers are going to be going through the roof. So now with these new laws that are requiring companies to disclose employee salary, we're seeing that some of the newly available listings for these job postings are showing very large salary ranges. An open role for a California-based senior designer for EA's Apex Legends has a range from $90,000 to $137,000. So imagine applying for a job and the range in which you could be paid is a span of over $40,000. That's nearly $50,000. So you don't really know exactly what you're getting yourself into there. That's a huge range. And they're not being super specific with the numbers that they're disclosing. And listen to this. Netflix's gaming studio. That's right, Netflix is getting into gaming. They posted that a senior games producer could earn anywhere between $50,000 to $600,000. $50,000 to $600,000? Good heavens. That's a range of $550,000. And then you have director of engineering. This position ranges, it could make on the low end $330,000 and on the high end $1.8 million. Good night and day. That is huge. You have no clue what you're getting yourself into there. My good. I mean, $330,000 on the low end. I would sign up for that any day. But like, you want to have some sort of idea. Maybe we set a ballpark range of like $20,000. Maybe can we start to narrow this down? Good Lord. Ranges of that breadth cause some to wonder if studios were intentionally keeping salary information vague. Yeah, you think? My heavens. This thing is spanning across the moon with that range. Anywhere from $330,000 to $1.8 million. I'm not doing the math there, but that's over $1 million range. Heavens, I'll tell you. You know what this reminds me of? There's actually two things this reminds me of. First one is in those job descriptions when they always throw in and other duties as assigned. That's just like a way of saying, yeah, what we listed here is probably what you're going to be doing, but at the end of the day, you do what we tell you to do. So it's just a way of like covering their own statements and protecting themselves and giving themselves more flexibility. And another thing that this makes me think of is something my mom and I like to joke about. When the weather forecast comes in and it's in the winter time and we're looking to see what's going to happen, maybe it's a few days out. There's a weather forecast that they say sometimes where they say there's a chance of a wintry mix. And so what you're saying in that situation is the ultimate cop-out. You're saying there's a chance, so you're covered if it doesn't happen, and you're covered if it does happen. You're right both ways. And then you say of a wintry mix. That means it could be snow, it could be freezing rain, it could be sleet, it could be hail. Literally any scenario, you're right. You're giving us no information. And that's how I think of these salary ranges. Guys, you got to be a little more specific. You got to help a brother. You got to help a brother out here. This is some slight chance of wintry mix stuff. This is some additional duties as assigned type of stuff. We deserve to know what kind of job we're applying for. Hopefully, these companies are listening to the What's Cooking podcast and they'll start being more specific. And I want to be specific with you guys that we're going to be back next Wednesday with another episode. I appreciate you tuning in. What's_cooking on Twitter, What's_cooking on Instagram. Check out the YouTube channel. Check out the Anchor page. If for some reason the podcast fails to upload once again, I'll direct you over to the right places so you can still listen. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening to my football career. I was quite the player back in the day and decided to move on, as we all do in life, one phase to the next. And nowadays, I'm the guy that has a podcast, and we talk about sports, finance, tech, video games every Wednesday, and I'll be back. So thanks for listening. Have a good one.
See ya.